Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Books and Bindings. We are here today with the lovely Moriah Chavis, author of Heart of the Sea.
Yay, Mariah, we're so happy you're here.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is so great. Well, thank you for saying yes. And we're just gonna we're just gonna jump right in. So I have some fun facts to kind of kick off the interview. So the first things I'm gonna say is Mariah was born on Christmas. So your birthday's coming up soon. Um, she collects Starbucks mugs from around different states. She and her husband have moved 3 times in the 2 years they've been married. She got both cats from underneath cars. And Claire, who is a tortie cat, is named after Claire Fraser from Outlander. And this very last one, I have so many questions because I have no idea what it is. She went to Forks for her bachelorette, and I've literally never heard of Forks before, so that intrigues me.
It's from Twilight. It's where Bella goes. It's where she meets Edward.
Twilight.
Forks, Washington.
That's so funny. Okay.
I'm laughing because we visited Erin Phillips and Valerie Cottonor a couple months ago, and Alyssa watched Twilight for the first time there.
Oh, okay.
It was quite the experience.
They didn't film it in Forks. So I didn't go to the filming locations. I went to legit Forks, Washington, and it is literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, and the only reason that the town, like the locals will tell you, the only reason this place survives now is basically because she made it so popular.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she's like what they would telling us. So it used to be a logging community, but there was like this owl that they were trying to protect in the forest, and so they were shutting down all these logging companies. And then her book came out, and so they have like, hundreds of thousands of people come every year just because it's Forks.
That's so amazing.
I
Well,
know.
the more you know. Now I know what Forks is. I was like, a restaurant? So now I know it's a place.
No, I told my mom because my husband and I got married really fast. I planned a whole wedding in 4 months because I was like, there's no point in us waiting. Like we were paying 2 rents. I was like, we might as well pay one. So we're just gonna get married for when our rents are up, which is in 4 months. And so I told both my husband and my mom, I was like, really, all I want to do for a trip is I just want to go to Forks, Washington. That's all I want to do. And so just me and my mom flew to Seattle and we drove into Forks and it was great.
That's amazing. Wow.
I love it.
I know, I do too. Well, what a way to kick off the interview. I feel like this is amazing. But we are going to get to the nitty gritty of Heart of the Sea. So without further ado, I'm going to ask the first question. What made you decide to write a pirate novel?
So it was March 2020, everything that went on in March 2020. And so my husband and I, he was my boyfriend at the time, we were like, we're just gonna watch all these movies because that's all you could do is sit at home and watch movies. I mean, like you couldn't go into work, you couldn't go anywhere. All you could do is work out at home or work out outside and watch movies. So that's what we did. And so we watched Harry Potter all the way through. We watched all the Marvel movies in chronological order. And we also watched Pirates of the Caribbean. And so I was watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And I was like, it would be really fun to write a pirate book. And so originally it started out as like historical fantasy. But then I was like, I really would prefer, I think, to create my own like kingdoms and stuff. And so I did inspire a lot of the places off of like actual geography. And so, but in the end, I named all the places, I changed things around. And so
That's so cool. Well, both Jordan and I are Pirates of the Caribbean fans.
yeah.
So, yeah, which is just so fun to read pirate novels. Like, it just reminded me so much of my childhood, which was great.
I love Pirates of the Caribbean. My husband listens to a lot of movie scores, and that's one of his favorites is Pirates of the Caribbean too.
It's a really good one. That's funny. Well, before I ask you the next question, you mentioned Marvel, so I have to ask because I also went through a chronological phase in 2020 because there was nothing else to do. Which which Marvel movie is your favorite?
I love Ant-Man, which I know is not as popular, but I love Ant-Man. I just think Paul Rudd's the best. And so I do love Ant-Man.
Yeah, those are really funny. Um,
Hmm.
so were there any pirate books specifically that inspired? I know you mentioned Pirates of the Caribbean, but was
Hmm.
there any books set in the ocean or anything that you drew inspiration from?
Um, I have read I think Trisha Levenseller's Pirates books, and I loved those. Um, and so, but I think a lot of it was I just love quest stories, and so I love, going on this quest, and I like, family stories too. And so I think that was really inspiring too. I mean, Chosen One too. Harry Potter is like my favorite. So the Chosen One trope, and that's in there. And so, but yeah, I think I'm inspired by everything that I've ever read, I think. So I think to narrow it down would be really hard. Just because like I started like around 17, I sat down at my computer. I was like, okay, you're gonna finish something. I don't care if it's the worst thing you've ever written, which it was. You're gonna finish it. So that's what I did. I finished it. And I think, you learn something from every book you read, and you learn something from every manuscript that you write. And so I think, each of those, and even in HOTS, like it looks nothing like the story I wrote. And like it took me about 7 months to write the first draft. And um, I have turned into a plotter, but when I wrote HOTS, I was a pantser totally. And so I found the story that way. And so like it started out as like this historical fantasy, and then it ended up being like this just regular fantasy. And so like the beginning did not match the end at like all. But from the get-go, I knew how it was going to end. I knew the ending from the get-go. So that's all that matters. But yeah.
That's
That's
amazing.
great.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally I loved the familial thread that you wove through your story. It was really touching and heartwarming and just such a powerful message too. So I thought that was really well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, kind of piggybacking off of just characters in general, were any of your characters influenced by real people?
Um, if they were, it was probably by accident, to be honest. But I know, I mean, so you mentioned the familial element. So I have a brother, which is kind of funny because Narissa has a sister. But Cyrus and Bessie, I loved like, they were like my favorite pair to write just because of how they feed off of each other. And I think that with people who have siblings, especially like a brother sister relationship, I think they'll definitely like see, they'll see, the brother sister camaraderie and how they interact with each other. Cause she, like Bessie, you've read it, Alyssa. And so she's just like, she says everything that I ever want to say. Like, I was like, I can be sarcastic with her. Like, she can say whatever she wants. Like, she calls Cyrus out when he's being dumb, and she just says things like they are. She does not like Narissa, especially at the beginning. And so she was really fun to write. And so I think, I put a lot of me into her, because I know I would be very skeptical of somebody who's like, I'm going to take your pirate ship. So,
Yeah.
and you're like, but we have to do it together. So
Yeah. No, I thought it was really well done. And I loved those dynamics, like on both sides. Like you had good familial tension on every character I feel like had that opportunity to have that familial tension, which was really cool.
Oh, that's great. So you mentioned Harry Potter. You've mentioned I don't recall the name of the author you gave for some of the pirate books that inspired your writing.
Trisha Levenseller. So she wrote Daughter of the Pirate King, and trying to think of some more she's written. That's the ones I read by her. I read that duology. I think there's a third one coming out. I think she wrote The Shadows Between Us. That's a good
Okay.
one too.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of those names. Would you say
Hmm.
those are your greatest literary, um, what's the word, influences, or do you have others that you draw from too?
I think I draw from a lot of different like writers. I think I like especially like I like to read a lot of romance books to see how to fit in romance, but then I also, I like to write slow burn, and so I like reading authors who have slow burn. But then like classical, like romance. I know Carmen Schrober, I love her stuff and she writes just strictly contemporary romance. But I love reading stuff like that because I like seeing how to make regular life interesting. And so even in fantasy, every now and then you're going to have like this lull. And so I like seeing how to make it interesting or how, these things that happen in everyday life can be majorly turned. And I love Melanie Dickerson. She does historical retellings. And so I love her writing. And Erin Beatty, she wrote The Traitor's Kiss, which if you've not read The Traitor's Kiss, it is amazing. She was in the army, and so which I didn't know until after I read the book, but she writes The Traitor's Kiss is basically about a girl who doesn't want to get married. So she works with a matchmaker and she makes a bargain with her. And she's like, so if I watch all these girls and help match make all your girls, you won't match make me. And so that's like the premise of the book. Like she's like, I don't want to get married. And so it ends up being like this whole political, like military thing. And she makes it not boring. And so like that, she makes all these mundane, like right, like all these things so interesting and puts a fantasy element, a fantasy swing on it. And so she's one of my favorites too.
That's awesome. I think I've heard of a lot of those authors, so it's neat. I can definitely see that too. So I think you've mentioned this before that everything you read can inspire you. But where do you feel like you get your inspiration from, like nature or passages in the Bible, or I don't know, just in general, like where do you feel like you get your primary source of inspiration?
I think, going for walks or runs or just being like, I'll notice that I'll have these random ideas just doing regular things. So, oh my goodness, my cat's on my counter. She's so yeah, going for walks in nature. I went on a lot of walks when I was writing Hot. Just because, like I said, it was during COVID, there was nothing else to do. So I'd go for like 6 mile walks. Like I could not stay in my apartment. I was ready to get out. And so, nature definitely. I like to look up, I like learning random facts. Um, and so, I'm writing something right now where I'll like look up the meaning of words. And that's what I did when I wrote Hots too. I use a lot of the roots of words to inspire what I named places. And I think that helped me kind of decide what the land looked like, what like why people would call it this, why is this the place they want to go? Why is this the place they need to go? And I do that with names too. And so then obviously I pray about my writing every day. I pray that it inspires people because in the end that is really what I want it to do, is especially with the way YA is going. I want it to be an inspiration. And I've had a lot of people or at least a few anyway. I had one reviewer in particular, she's like, this was a book that I could just pick up part of it and read passages to my kids. And I wasn't worried about like there being anything inappropriate in it. And then I've had people tell me that they ordered my book just because I've told them like this is actually a book for teens. Um, so it's like a book that you can trust, like you can read it together, you can read it as a family. And so that's one thing that I really aspire to do too. I hope that answers the question.
That was great.
I think you mentioned earlier it took you about 7 months to write the book. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you speak more about your writing process? And I think you said you started out as a pantser and then you became a plotter, or maybe it was vice versa. But
Yeah, let me turn my kitchen light on so you can see me. It's gotten dark all of a sudden. Maybe the wrong light. Hold on.
there we go.
Okay.
That's better.
I was like, it all of a sudden got dark and I didn't realize that I probably should have turned my kitchen light on. Okay. But yeah, so like I said, I started writing, like taking it very seriously when I was about 17. But always, 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 I have hated outlines. They've been my least favorite thing. Like even in school, like I did not like outlines. I would rather write an essay and have to go back and fix the introduction than have to outline it. Whenever it was a requirement, I would turn an outline in first. And I was like, this is harder than writing a 5-page paper. Like I cannot do this. And so when I started writing, I was a pantser. I always like to know the ending when I wrote like that, but sometimes I haven't. And so sometimes it's changed. But recently, I started writing short stories, and so that has helped me really see like how to write a story from beginning to end and really know the ending, because the short stories, you only have so much time. So that really helped me. Not only I'm a very wordy person, and so that helped me shorten what I was going to say. I even have one short story that's coming out soon and recently, and she's like, Mariah, you are not writing a novel. This is a short story. One of my editors. And so that's been a good way to like show me how to write. With Hot, I wrote it from, beginning to end. When I know the end, then that means I make notes on how to change it. I actually didn't draw my map until after I had written the first draft. Like I just had it in my head, and then I wrote it out like on this big piece of paper, and then I had it like lying out in front of me. So then I could be like, okay, they go here, they go here, they go here, and I was like mapping it out. And so that really kind of centered me. With a story that I'm working on now, I actually was writing it as a short story, and I sent it to one of my critique partners. And she's like, this is not going to be able to be a short story. She's like, you need to write this as a novel. And so I ended up putting it aside, and I wrote something else for that anthology. I gave that one, and that ended up being my short story, Thorns of Winter, which is in Sharper Than Thorns from 20 Hills Publishing. But with this one, so I wrote like the first 5 pages, the current story that I'm working on. I wrote the first 5 pages, or what I thought was going to be the first 5 pages. And then I went and outlined the whole thing. And I had never done that before. But then I outlined the whole thing, and then I started to go chapter by chapter, but then I realized that's just not me. And so when I started writing it again at the beginning of December. And so then I just turned all those bullet points into checkoffs. And I can't remember, I think it was Adrian Young who has this method for outlining where it breaks up into 3 acts. And in between those acts are different kind of points that you have to have. And so with that story, I outlined the different points that I have to have. And those are the beats chart. And so when I finished the first draft for it, the beats kind of lined up. But it's so funny because you think you're going to write a story this way. And I ended up writing the middle first because I'm working with somebody as a mentor right now. And she's like, I think in order to get people emotionally connected to your characters, you need to change the entire timeline. Like, I think you need to take all these flashback chapters and make them like current. And so it went from all these flashback chapters are happening 4 years in the past to they're happening 6 months in the past. The beginning of the book takes place at a completely different time. And what I thought was the beginning is now the middle. And so even with outlining, it was easier because then I could like piece together things.
Mhm.
And so I think of writing as more of a puzzle than an outline. And you have to put all the pieces together so they make the picture that you want readers to see, instead of just these are all the puzzle pieces. And then like, because these are all the puzzle pieces and they just make one straight line, but that's not how a puzzle works. These are all the puzzle pieces and they make one big picture. And so now that I've looked at my writing like that, I think it's helped a lot.
I really love that. I love that, like the whole puzzle thing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can relate a lot with that because I also don't like outlining.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just think that's great. Jordan, were you gonna say something?
No, I just think it's so cool. That's probably my favorite question to ask people that we interview, because every single person says something different. And I've never heard somebody explain the writing process like that. So I'm inspired.
Too.
Well, and like in my head, I don't even know if like I realized what I was doing, but like when my mentor told me, she's like, I think you need to change the timeline. And so what I did was I opened a new document. And then when I opened that document, I just took the chapters and literally pieced them together. And I even left the chapter names that they were, so that I could see how long in the story they are. And then I had to take off these puzzle pieces and find the missing pieces that I hadn't written yet, because then I had to add more like stuff in to give, more emotional connection. And with Hots, that's what I had to do too. Like with Heart of the Sea, I call it HOTS in my head. So normally that's just what I call it. And so with Heart of the Sea, I was starting at the wrong place. So I ended up, getting feedback from querying, getting feedback from acquisition editors and things like that. They're like, I actually had one agent tell me this, and then another acquisition editor, sorry, tell me the same thing. They're like, your story starts too slow. And so with that, I had to figure out, like, the stuff in the beginning, I still needed it, but it just happened in the wrong place, or it happened too slow. And so I ended up cutting about 50 pages. I cut 2 or 3 characters. And so that way it sped it up. And so like the whole where they make a deal wasn't even happening until like page 100, and now it happens on page like 30. And so, you have to get to that point a lot faster. And I like to think of the inciting incident too. Like a Narissa's inciting incident, we actually don't even see it. Like we don't see it at all. The inciting incident doesn't have to happen in this, like in the story. For me, her inciting incident is when her sister is taken. And so you don't even see that until like 3/4 of the way through the book. But that's her incident. And so that's why, like, I had to explain to the reader, like, we all know she's looking for her sister, but that happens off the page until you get to 3/4 through the book. And so I think, looking at writing, everybody has to find their process, and everybody has to find a different way that works for them. And so, yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah, that's so cool. So the next question is, what is the most important thing you hope readers take away from reading Heart of the Sea?
I think that the most important thing for me was that there's always light in the darkness. So I do have this religious undertone with Narissa. She's wrestling with the darkness. Her sister has fallen prey to it. And throughout, I knew that I knew when I was writing her, especially with her faith, I didn't want her to be somebody who had turned her back on the light. I wanted her to be somebody who shows that even when all this goes wrong, she still sees the light. And so, like, there's even a part where she's talking to one of the villains, because there's a few different like villains, few different things in the way. She's talking to one of the villains, and the villain's like questioning her. She's like, what has this light ever done for you? Like, you're on this entire hunt for your sister. And she like, basically, I had this ability to do this. It's just like, without the light, it would all be like, without the light, there would be no hope. And right now I have hope. And so I think that was really important, is for readers to see that.
I think the message was really clearly done and well done too, because I definitely saw
Oh, thank
that.
you.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Oh, thanks.
I have not read your book yet, but after hearing you talk more about it, I'm like, this book is right up my alley. So I'm excited to read it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of stepping away from talking about your book a little bit, we wanted to talk a little bit about Instagram, or as we authors like to call the space, Bookstagram, because we're interacting with so many other people who also love books and authors and all of that great stuff. So what would you say is your favorite part about being on Bookstagram?
Definitely the community that I've built through Instagram, or Bookstagram and Writergram. It's so hard to find people who, like, when you think about it, Bookstagram is really a lot smaller of a world than we think it is. Especially there's people who read like everything under the sun, and that world's even smaller. Like, there's people who just genuinely love books, and I think sometimes we forget how small that world is, and because social media has opened it up so wide. But like, I talk to people every day from other sides of the world sometimes, and so people from all over who are reading my book who I never would have met if it hadn't been for social media. And so I think definitely the connections that I have made and the people that I've met through there, it makes writing less lonely of a process, because in the end, it's just you and your computer, or you and a notebook. But it helps to have people who you can talk to about it. Like, one of my critique partners, I've never met her. I've talked to her for years and years, and it turned into a friendship more, and I have another writer that I've met through Bookstagram, and she and I like to say that we're friends first, writer friends second. We're just regular friends. And, you know, half the time we're not even talking about writing when we're talking to each other. We're talking about everything else that we're doing. And so I think that's important too, is, you know, like-minded people that had turned into genuine friendships is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like Bookstagram, Writergram, such a like a special place, like um similar to you, just great to make connections that you otherwise wouldn't have had before. Um and like you said, great opportunities to get your books out there because, you know, we're in a day and age where social media is the means of, you know, marketing and getting, you know, your name out there. So yeah, it's really cool. And I'm so glad Jordan joined within the past. Has it been a year now, Jordan, that you've been, or over a year?
Yeah, I think I joined January of last year, so it's been a year and a half. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's just been so fun. So fun to get to know so many people.
Yeah, I didn't know that this community existed. I knew Alyssa did this for a while, and I was like, oh, I'll just pop on and, you know, share the stuff I'm reading. And it's so much more than that. It really is about the people, like you said.
Mhm. Yeah, and then we get to
I know
connect with
there's nothing.
like
Oh,
you.
sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say we get to connect with people
Oh,
like you, which is so cool. So, but what were
yeah.
you gonna say?
I was going to say that I think there's a quote. I can't remember who said it. And I can't remember the exact quote, but there's nothing like a friendship formed from sharing a love of the same book.
Hmm. I don't, yeah, I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah.
It's really good. That's a good quote.
Yeah. I can't remember who says it though. Could be
Maybe
Oscar Wilde. I feel like it's could
He
be him,
says,
but I don't know if it was. Yeah, he does.
well, our last question, Mariah. Um, is there anything else you'd like us to know about this story, about just write like future stories that you're writing, just anything that you would like your readers to know?
Well, if anyone's near Greenville, South Carolina, my book launch party is this weekend, and it's at a coffee shop in Pelzer. And so I'm excited about that. And so they'll be open to the public, obviously. So if anybody wants to come by, you can. Um, so yeah, and then I have another book coming out next year with 20 Hills, and it is a collection of short stories slash novellas that take place in Victorian England. I'm working on that right now. So I'm working on story 3. Yeah, I'm working on story 3 this week. And so, but yeah. And so I'm really excited about that one. It's got ghosts, mysteries, murder, and life and death.
very nice. Well, as of when we put up this video, I think your book will be live, right? It'll be ready to purchase. So buy your copy of Heart of the Sea where books are sold, or is it on Amazon? Where can people find it?
It's on, yeah, they can buy it. I think mostly everywhere. I know it's because I made a link, a universal link that's in on my Instagram profile. So I know it's at Barnes and Noble. You can buy it on Amazon. I think Indigo is going to be selling it
Okay.
for Canadian readers, and then I think a bunch of other places. And eventually it's going to have an audiobook. The audiobook's not finished yet, but it will have an audiobook. And so, and I've heard, sorry, I've heard the narrator who's done Cyrus, he's finished his half. And so he sent me all of Cyrus's chapters, and they're very good. So
That's so exciting. And we'll be sure to put your Instagram handle in the caption. Is that what it is? Caption comments area below the video where people can click on it and find it and get all your information. Also with a link to purchase your book. So it's easily accessible for viewers. So yeah, Mariah, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic, busy life that we all feel like we all are hectic and busy with our
I
schedules.
know.
So thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with us and share your heart and Heart of the Sea. Yeah, it's been a blessed time. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks, Mariah. Have a good
Yeah,
night.
have a good
All right,
night.
you too.